The tragedy of Leonardo DiCaprio is that he is so perfect no one thinks he also needs to be saved. We remember the perfect face on the Titanic poster, the flawless career spanning more than 3 decades, and the artist who turns every role into a masterpiece. What we often fail to see is the unspoken pain beneath that perfection, a wound carried from childhood that no Oscar statue can truly fill. He acts with absolute dedication, because film becomes the only place where life feels lighter than the burdens waiting outside the set. The man who once made the entire Oscar audience rise to their feet after 22 years of waiting is also the one who was nearly bitten to death by a great white shark in a diving cage in South Africa, was smashed in the face with a bottle by a stranger requiring 17 stitches, and had to watch his brother fall into addiction and become a fugitive. Outside the screen, the world proves far more ruthless than the characters he has mastered. Today, behind the face of the greatest artist of his generation entering his 51st year, is a haunting question. How can a man who possesses everything the world desires never find what billions of ordinary people have, a peaceful home? He grew up in a neighborhood the neighbors called Needle Alley. His parents divorced when he was just 1 year old. His grandmother was born in a bomb shelter amid World War II air raids. His mother drove 3 hours every day across the longest roads of Los Angeles just to take her son to a better school. At 51, the man the entire planet envies has never married, never had children. He has quietly lived with obsessive-compulsive disorder for most of his adult life. He has donated more than $100 million to the environment, but is criticized for private jets and yachts. His name appears on every list the world compiles, the richest, the most talented, the most powerful, but also on the lists few dare to say aloud, the loneliest, the most mysterious, and the most enigmatic. The perfection we see may be the thickest armor built from a shattered childhood, polished through every role, and held tight by discipline. Long before the Oscars, before Titanic, there was a young couple struggling to survive poverty. George DiCaprio was an underground comic book artist of half Italian, half German blood. His mother, Ermeline Indenburken, was a German legal secretary who was born in a bomb shelter in Germany in 1943 during an Allied bombing raid. When she was pregnant and on honeymoon with George in Florence, she stopped in front of a Leonardo da Vinci painting at the Uffizi Gallery. At that exact moment, the baby kicked hard. The poor couple stood before the masterpiece of the Renaissance genius and decided to name their child after him. Leonardo Wilhelm DiCaprio was born on November 11, 1974, in Hollywood, Los Angeles, California, the only child in a family about to fall apart. George and Ermeline divorced when Leo was just 1 year old, but they did not turn the separation into a battlefield. Instead, they bought 2 houses next to each other, sharing a backyard, so the little boy could run back and forth. That image is both beautiful and painful. Two people who loved their son, but could not love each other enough to stay. Leo said in an interview with Interview magazine in 1994 that he actually preferred it because he had two different worlds to connect with. The child had learned to turn absence into something positive, a skill he would later bring to the screen and turn characters, pain into art. Ermeline raised him, protected him, and believed in him. She drove 3 hours every day from the poor neighborhood on the east side of Los Angeles to the Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies, then to John Marshall High School, just so her son could study where his birth circumstances would never have allowed. On February 14, 2016, Leo stood on the BAFTA stage and said, "I did not grow up in an affluent life. I grew up in a very difficult neighborhood on the east side of Los Angeles. This woman drove 3 hours every day to show me a different opportunity. Today is my mother's birthday. "Mom, happy birthday. I love you so much." He proved that by bringing her to the Oscars, to the Golden Globes, to the BAFTAs, every most important night included. But she was not the only woman who shaped him. His grandmother, Helene Indenburken, was born in Odessa, Ukraine, in 1915. In 1917, when the Bolshevik Revolution broke out, her parents fled to Germany with their 2-year-old daughter. She was a woman who survived 2 world wars. Leo called her, brought her to the Titanic premiere in 1997 and Gangs of New York in 2002, and said that my grandmother is Russian. To me, she is the embodiment of inner strength and completeness. She went through poverty, war, and immigration. From about the age of 12, Leo declared he would become an actor, and Ermelin took him to auditions every day after school. Hundreds of castings, hundreds of rejections. One talent agent looked at the skinny kid with the hard-to-pronounce Italian surname and advised him to change his name to Lenny Williams to make him more marketable. Leo refused. The 12-year-old boy from Needle Alley with no money, no connections, but enough backbone to keep the name his parents had given him in front of the Da Vinci painting in Florence. Small roles in the series Parenthood in 1990, the soap opera Santa Barbara the same year, the sitcom Growing Pains from 1991 to 1992, and his film debut in Critters 3 in 1991. A low-budget horror movie. Every audition was a hope. Every role was a silent promise that he would never return to that rickety house as a failure. Acting was not just a passion, it was survival. In 1993, 18-year-old Leonardo DiCaprio took the role of Arnie Grape in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, directed by Lasse Hallström, co-starring Johnny Depp, who was already an established star. Arnie was a boy with an intellectual disability, not the lead, not the character the script built the film around. But Leo turned that supporting role into the emotional center of the entire story. He did not play a disabled person. He disappeared completely inside that boy. From the off-center gaze to the constant fidgeting of the fingers, from sudden laughter to moments of panic that no 18-year-old actor had any right to perform so truthfully. Johnny Depp later admitted that while working with Leo on set he realized he was standing next to a completely different kind of talent, not technique taught in schools, but an innate ability to vanish into a character until the boundary between actor and role no longer existed. The result was an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the 66th Academy Awards on March 21, 1994, when Leo was only 19, one of the youngest nominations in Academy history. He did not win. The statue that night went to Tommy Lee Jones for The Fugitive, but Hollywood had marked the name Leonardo DiCaprio in indelible ink. The boy from Needle Alley had walked into the casting room empty-handed and walked out with the invitation of an entire industry. 3 years later, the surge began. In 1996, Australian director Baz Luhrmann chose Leo for the role of Romeo in the modern version of Romeo plus Juliet, the film that turned Shakespeare into the language of the MTV generation. Leo's face appeared on posters worldwide, on teen magazine covers from America to Japan, on the bedroom walls of millions of teenage girls. But that role was not just about looks. Leo brought to Romeo a raw and authentic energy that no 21-year-old actor had any right to possess. He cried over Juliet's body with a pain that needed no script direction. And the entire theater fell silent, not out of politeness, but because no one could breathe. The world was falling in love with Leonardo DiCaprio, but it did not yet know that a tsunami was coming. In 1997, director James Cameron chose him for the role of Jack Dawson in Titanic, the romantic epic that no one believed would succeed, because the budget had ballooned to the point that studios called it a financial disaster. before a single ticket was sold. A little-known detail. Cameron initially asked Leo to audition and Leo refused, believing he did not need to audition for anyone. Cameron looked straight into the eyes of the 22-year-old, who was so confident he bordered on arrogant, and said that if he did not audition, he would not get the part. This was not a tribute session but a casting. Either read the lines or go home. Leo read the lines, and the moment he opened his mouth, everyone in the room knew Jack Dawson had found his owner. Titanic premiered on December 19, 1997, and became a cultural phenomenon unprecedented in cinema history. $2.2 billion in worldwide box office. The highest-grossing film of all time at that point. 11 Oscars at the 70th Academy Awards on March 23, 1998, including Best Picture and Best Director. At 23, Leo became the most famous face on the planet. The press called the phenomenon Leomania. Thousands of teenage girls fainted outside theaters. His name was screamed on every continent, and the privacy he once knew vanished completely overnight. But in the middle of the fame storm that any 23-year-old actor would drown in, Leo looked in the mirror and realized something more terrifying than failure. This fame could swallow him whole, turning him forever into romantic Jack Dawson on the ship's bow instead of a real artist. The fame came so fast it was dangerous. Like the Titanic itself, so large that no one believed it could sink. But Leo had witnessed enough collapse in his life to know that everything can sink. He said that fame is like a video game, especially with the paparazzi and everyone watching you, but it is part of who I am now. And then Leonardo DiCaprio did what no one expected. After Titanic, every major Hollywood studio threw money at his feet. Superhero roles, blockbuster action films, romantic comedies with the most famous actresses. The easiest and shortest path to becoming the richest star of his generation. Leo turned them all down. Instead, he chose The Beach in 2000, directed by Danny Boyle, a film torn apart by critics and nominated for a Golden Raspberry for Worst Actor. But it showed he was willing to risk his reputation to search for something larger than safety. Then in 2002, he entered Martin Scorsese's territory with Gangs of New York, a violent, dark, complex film to the point of discomfort. The complete opposite of everything Titanic audiences loved about him. The decision to work with Scorsese was not just a career choice, it was a declaration. Leo chose art over commerce, long-term respect over quick money. The harshest 60-year-old director in Hollywood over studios ready to sign blank checks for anything with his face on the poster. But that decision also carried a price that, at 25, he could not yet fully foresee. Leo would spend more than a decade being questioned by critics. Was he truly great or just a handsome face who knew how to choose great directors? Nominated for Oscars, then losing. Nominated, then losing again. Nominated and losing once more, while less famous actors took the statues home. There is a special kind of courage that very few people recognize. When you are standing at the highest place the world can put you, when every door is open, when every path leads to easy money and fame, and you look at it all and say, no, I want something else. At 25, Leo already understood something many people never understand in a lifetime. An easy career would kill the artist inside him. The journey to recognition for Leonardo DiCaprio was not a straight line, but a repeated cycle of building up and collapsing. In 2004, he played aviation tycoon Howard Hughes in Martin Scorsese's The Aviator, the genius tormented from within by obsessive-compulsive disorder, a role into which Leo poured his own silent battle with OCD before the camera. He did not need to study the character from the outside, because he understood Howard Hughes from the inside. Second Oscar nomination, 77th Academy Awards on February 27, 2005. The statue went to Jamie Foxx for Ray. Leo went home empty-handed. In 2006, Blood Diamond, directed by Edward Zwick. The role of former mercenary Danny Archer dealing diamonds in Sierra Leone, with an African accent, so perfect that native South Africans were astonished. Third Oscar nomination, 79th Academy Awards on February 25, 2007. The statue went to Forrest Whitaker for The Last King of Scotland. Leo again went home empty-handed. Inception in 2010, directed by Christopher Nolan, a masterpiece the whole world called a masterpiece. Yet the Academy did not even nominate him in any acting category. Not a loss, but a complete snub. And that was perhaps the most painful wound. Django Unchained in 2012 with Quentin Tarantino. The role of slave owner Calvin Candy so vicious that audiences were both disgusted and unable to look away. He deliberately cut his own hand on set when smashing a wine glass and kept acting while real blood ran across the table. Critics raved, but the Academy again did not nominate him. The Wolf of Wall Street in 2013, his fifth collaboration with Scorsese. 3 hours of chaos in which Leo played Jordan Belfort, the fraudulent stockbroker living the most debauched life in America. Fourth Oscar nomination, 86th Academy Awards on March 2, 2014. The statue went to Matthew McConaughey for Dallas Buyers Club. Leo went home empty-handed for the 4th time. Each loss, the internet exploded with memes. Fans launched petitions to the Academy. The phrase, "Leo deserves it," became the catchphrase of an entire generation. Yet the statue remained in someone else's hands. Then in 2015, director Alejandro González Iñárritu invited him to star in The Revenant, the role of frontiersman Hugh Glass, attacked by a grizzly nearly to death, then betrayed by his own companions, and left for dead in the American wilderness of the 19th century winter. The filming process was no longer acting. It was an aesthetic ordeal. Leo ate raw bison liver on camera even though he followed a plant-based diet. He submerged himself in frozen rivers in Canada at -25 degrees Celsius, wore a nearly 50-kilogram bear skin that became heavier when soaked. He slept inside animal carcasses. The crew shot only with natural light, so each day allowed only a few hours of work. And when the snow in Canada melted midway, the entire production had to relocate all the way to the southern tip of Argentina to find real snow. Leo said that every day of shooting this film was the hardest day. "This was the most difficult film I have ever made." He was not merely making a movie. He was using his own body as the final piece of evidence to everyone who had ever asked whether he was truly great, or just a handsome face who knew how to choose great directors. That he was willing to destroy himself to prove it, and if that was not enough, then nothing on earth would be. There are people born with talent who patiently wait for the world to recognize them. And then there is Leonardo DiCaprio, who decided that if the world had not yet recognized him, he would endure the pain until they could no longer ignore him. On February 28, 2016, the Dolby Theater in Hollywood, the 88th Academy Awards' 5th nomination. But this time, the whole world knew that if he lost tonight, it would no longer be the Academy's decision, but an injustice of the universe. The presenter opened the envelope, and the Oscar goes to Leonardo DiCaprio. The Dolby Theater audience rose to its feet, not out of politeness, but because 22 years of compression were finally released in one moment. The entire film industry exhaled after more than 2 decades of owing this man a statue. Leo walked onto the stage and said, "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for listening to a slightly difficult 13-year-old kid who wanted to go to auditions every day after school." Then, in the most glorious, most private moment of his life, he used his final minute on stage not to talk about himself, but to talk about climate change, about a planet slowly dying. Even on the night when every spotlight shone only on him, Leo still chose to redirect that light elsewhere. And who sat beside him when his name was called? Ermeline, the mother who had driven 3 hours every day. The circle was complete, from the back seat of an old car to the front row of the Oscars, from Needle Alley to the Dolby Theater. But the statue did not change everything. The Oscar did not make Leo stop. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in 2019 with Tarantino, the role of Rick Dalton, an actor terrified of being forgotten. A role many wondered whether Leo was playing his own deepest fear. Do Look Up in 2021 with Adam McKay. Killers of the Flower Moon in 2023, his sixth collaboration with Scorsese, the chilling role of Ernest Burkhart. Sixth Oscar nomination at the 96th Academy Awards on March 10, 2024. And one battle after another in 2025 with Paul Thomas Anderson, seventh Oscar nomination, Best Actor Award from the National Board of Review, named by Time as Entertainer of the Year 2025. At 51, Leo is still being nominated for Oscars because he is still creating art at a level most actors never reach in a lifetime. Most Hollywood stars peak and then fade. Leo at 51 is still at the peak. Leonardo DiCaprio built his career with near-absolute discipline, every role chosen with an obsession for rigor. Every step calculated with a precision very few Hollywood stars can maintain for 3 decades. But inside that perfect armor is a battle no camera ever recorded. Leo has lived with OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, at a mild to moderate level for most of his adult life. He often feels the compulsion to walk through a doorway multiple times, to step on certain points on the sidewalk, small rituals that a person walking beside him might never notice. But inside his head is a continuous war between the rational mind that knows the action is meaningless and the irresistible impulse that forces him to perform it. In 2004, when Martin Scorsese invited him to play Howard Hughes in The Aviator, the genius tycoon whose severe OCD gnawed at him until he locked himself away from the world, Leo accepted the role not by chance. He understood Hughes from the inside in a way no other actor could, but the price was terrifying. Leo admitted that while playing Hughes, his own OCD became significantly worse. The role triggered impulses he had spent years learning to control. And millions who watched The Aviator praised the astonishingly authentic performance, without knowing that the authenticity did not come from technique. It came from the lived experience of a man fighting his own brain in front of the camera. But OCD was not the only threat. Leo said in a 2015 interview with Wired magazine that if a cat has 9 lives, then I think I've used up a few already. And he was not joking. In 2006, while filming Blood Diamond in South Africa, Leo went cage diving to watch sharks. A giant great white shark charged the cage, trying to bite a tuna head stuck on the top. Half the shark's body entered the cage, only an arm's length from his head, its jaws snapping 5 or 6 times while Leo lay flat on the bottom of the cage. The operator said this had never happened in 30 years of operation. Leo recounted on the Ellen DeGeneres show in 2014 that it was a completely terrifying experience. The second time, on a skydiving jump, both the main parachute and the reserve failed to open properly. Leo free fell from thousands of feet before the instructor intervened at the last second. And he confirmed to Wired that the sensation of his whole life flashing before his eyes in that moment was real. Not a figure of speech, but literally true. The third time on a Delta Airlines flight to Russia, Leo sat by the window and watched an entire wing of the plane burst into a fireball. The plane made an emergency landing in New York, and he described the moment all the engines shut down as you just sit there gliding in absolute silence, and no one on the plane says a word. The fourth time, in 2010, while diving in the Galapagos Islands filming a documentary with oceanographer Sylvia Earle. Leo encountered an underwater emergency and had to be rescued from drowning by actor Edward Norton. 4 times fate placed Leonardo DiCaprio on the edge of life and death, and 4 times he walked through. Fame, $300 million, an Oscar. None of those things could stop a shark's jaws, a failed parachute, or burning engines. Outside the stage lights, he is as fragile as anyone. And then the scar came not from nature, but from another human being. On June 20, 2005, right at the height of his career, with The Aviator having just earned him an Oscar nomination, Leo attended a party at Rick Salomon's Hollywood Hills mansion. As he and friends were leaving, Aretha Wilson, 37, Canadian, charged at him and smashed a broken beer bottle into his head. 17 stitches on his face, neck, and ear. The most famous face in Hollywood was nearly permanently destroyed by a stranger on an ordinary night. Wilson fled to Canada, was detained in Toronto for another assault, then extradited to the United States, eventually pleaded guilty to assault with a deadly weapon, and received a 2-year prison sentence in 2010. Leo never publicly commented much on that night, the characteristic silent endurance of someone who had learned to hide wounds from a very young age. But perhaps the deepest crack in his life did not lie on his skin, but inside his own family. After divorcing, Father George married Peggy Ann Farrar, who had a son of her own, Adam Farrar, born October 4, 1971, 3 years older than Leo. Adam became his stepbrother, and the two boys grew up sharing the same backyard, the same father, the same Hollywood dream. Adam was actually the first in the family to succeed in entertainment, appearing in commercials and television shows as a child. The two brothers were once very close, often going to Lakers basketball games together, sitting courtside with the smiles of two boys who believed the future would open wide for both. Then the paths diverged. Leo headed toward Titanic, Oscars, $300 million. Adam's last role was in the film Pups in 1999, and then he began to fall. In 2000, he was arrested for threatening violence against a girlfriend. In 2013, he was charged with heroin possession in Los Angeles, failed to appear in court, and a warrant was issued. On January 24, 2014, he was arrested at the Collin County Sheriff's Office in Texas while visiting his girlfriend Charity Moore, who was incarcerated there. He was arrested right at the front desk on multiple warrants from Los Angeles, including drug possession, theft, and telephone harassment. Adam lost custody of his daughter Normandy, who is now being raised by grandfather George and step-grandmother Peggy. And here is the detail few people tell. Even though Leo had not spoken to Adam for years, even though Adam had not been invited to his birthday for more than a decade, Leo remained present in the life of his niece Normandy. Recently photographed taking the little girl shopping in Beverly Hills, spending time with the child whose biological father could not care for her. There are reports that Leo once helped Adam into rehab in 2013, but the relationship remained strained, and he has never publicly spoken a single word about his stepbrother. Two boys from the same backyard, the same father, the same dream. One became the greatest icon of his generation. The other became an addicted fugitive. The distance between them is not geographic. It is the distance between two possible versions of the same starting point. Leonardo DiCaprio could have been Adam Farrar. Adam Farrar could have been Leonardo DiCaprio. The boundary between the two fates is thinner than anyone wants to admit, and Leo knows that better than anyone. Perhaps that is why he has never stopped caring for Normandy. The child carrying the weight of a broken family that he understands all too well, because he once was that child. But all those scars, on his face, on his skin, on his family, are still not the deepest wound. At the age of 51, Leonardo DiCaprio has never married, never had children, and possesses a romantic history whose very repetition has become a global cultural phenomenon. Kristen Zhang, model and actress, the first known serious relationship from 1995 to 1999. Zhang wrote an essay in People magazine in 2022 that Leo was a very gentle and thoughtful boyfriend, and they broke up around after her 25th birthday. Gisele Bündchen, Brazilian supermodel from 2000 to 2005, the longest and perhaps most serious relationship Leo has ever had. He brought her to the 77th Academy Awards on February 27, 2005, and it would be another 15 years before he brought another girlfriend to the Oscars. Gisele later told Vanity Fair in March 2009 that we were very young and grew up together in many ways. We were not destined to be boyfriend and girlfriend, but I respect him tremendously. Bar Refaeli, Israeli model, on and off from 2005 to 2011. Blake Lively, 5 months in 2011. Erin Heatherton, Victoria's Secret model, 10 months before breaking up in October 2012 because of crazy schedules. Toni Gann, German model, 18 months. Then Camilla Maron, actress and model from 2018 to 2022, nearly 4 years. A relationship once defended in an interview with the Los Angeles Times in 2019, saying there are so many relationships in Hollywood and throughout world history where people have large age gaps. I think anyone should be allowed to date whoever they want. People magazine reported they broke up in August 2022 when Maron was 25. Jiggy Hadid late 2022 did not last long. A source told Page 6 that Jiggy did not have the energy to chase after DiCaprio. Her top priority was her daughter. And currently Victoria Lamas, Italian model born June 7, 1998, dating since around August 2023, has now passed the age of 27. The first woman to break what the internet calls the curse of 25. The curse of 25 is not a phrase Leo coined. It is a cultural phenomenon the internet discovered when someone charted the ages of all of Leo's girlfriends at the time of breakup and realized that almost no one crossed the 25 threshold. It became a meme, a topic of debate on every forum, one of the most familiar questions about the private life of any star on the planet. A close source told Page 6 in August 2022 that he does not want a family and does not want to be around women who might pressure him about it. The moment a girl meets him, the clock starts counting down. If she is too old, then in a few years she will be gone. If she gets too close, then in a few years she will also be gone. The question is not whether Leo has the right to date whoever he wants. Every adult has that right. The question is why a pattern has repeated with near mathematical precision for 3 decades. Is this the free choice of a man who knows what he wants, or an insecure attachment model, rooted in a childhood where the family fell apart when he was only 1 year old? Leo grew up between 2 houses, witnessed a marriage end before he could remember it beginning, watched his stepbrother build a family then lose everything to addiction. Is the absolute perfection in his career a way of compensating for the imperfection he refuses to allow in his private life? Does every relationship end before it becomes deep enough to hurt him the way his parents' divorce did? No one knows, and perhaps Leo himself does not know. That question has no answer in any interview he has ever given because he has never allowed anyone to ask it. But there is one image that has repeated throughout 30 years of his career, and every answer is probably contained in it. The 88th Oscars on February 28, 2016, who sat beside him, Ermelin. The BAFTAs on February 16, 2026, who linked arms with him on the red carpet, Ermelin, 83 years old in a black sequin dress. The 83rd Golden Globes on January 11, 2026, Ermelin. The SAG Awards Ermelin. Every film premiere, every awards ceremony, every most important moment in the life of the most powerful man in Hollywood, the woman walking beside him is not a wife, not a girlfriend, but the mother who drove 3 hours every day across Los Angeles 40 years earlier. That image is both beautiful and painful in the way only truth can create. Beautiful because of a mother-son bond that has endured every rise and fall, every temptation, everything Hollywood can throw at a man, and she is still there. Painful because it is also silent evidence that he has no one else to bring. The 83-year-old mother is still the most loyal date of the 51-year-old star. The world calls it sweet, but if you look more closely, it is also an unspoken question that no one dares to ask directly. This mother-son relationship is the strongest emotional pillar in Leo's life. But is it also the reason he has never needed or never allowed anyone else to become that pillar? No one knows whether it is a choice or a trap. Perhaps Leo himself does not know. But when the lights go out and the red carpet is rolled up, the woman who drove 3 hours every day is still the only one walking beside him. And then in 2008, even the deepest root began to disappear. His grandmother, Helene Indenburken, the woman born in Odessa under the name Yelena Smirnova, who survived the Russian Revolution and 2 world wars, who taught her grandson to read Dostoevsky in Hollywood, passed away in 2008 at the age of 93. Leo did not only lose his grandmother, he lost the final connection to his Russian and Ukrainian and German roots, lost the old world she carried when she immigrated across 3 continents, lost the voice that told war stories in German mixed with Russian, lost the familiar call of Oma that no one else on earth could replace. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Leo donated $10 million to Ukraine. And that was not merely the humanitarian act of a wealthy star. It was a deeply personal act of a man watching his grandmother's homeland being destroyed on the nightly news. 3 generations of women created Leo, who survived war, Ermelin born in a bomb shelter then raising a child alone, and after them a void no one stayed long enough to become the next generation. And perhaps that is why Leo has built a fortress around his private life that very few Hollywood stars can match. In the age of social media, where every famous person exposes every meal, every trip, every private moment on the internet, Leo maintains an almost absolute silence. An Instagram account with more than 60 million followers, but only posts about climate change and animal protection. Not a single selfie, not a single everyday photo, not a single image of a girlfriend. He almost never answers questions about his private life. And when asked, he says that fame is like a video game, especially with the paparazzi and everyone watching you, but it is part of who I am now. Then changes the subject. Leo has built that fortress with the most consistent silence in Hollywood. And the question no one can answer is whether that fortress is protecting him or imprisoning him. Most celebrities let the world see too much. Leo lets the world see too little. And both are reactions to the same fear, the fear of being seen exactly as he really is. At the age of 51, his life is neither a peak nor a decline. It is stability at a level most people on this planet only dare to dream of. His career is still at the absolute top. 7th Oscar nomination for one battle after another directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Best Actor Award from the National Board of Review at the January 2026 ceremony. Time magazine naming him Entertainer of the Year 2025. Estimated net worth around $300 million. Real estate spread across Hollywood Hills, Malibu, Silver Lake, Beverly Hills, Palm Springs, and a private 104-acre island called Blackador Cay off the coast of Belize. The production company, Appian Way Productions he founded, does not only produce films for himself, but creates content for the entire industry. At the age when most men are teaching their children to ride bikes or preparing them for college, Leonardo DiCaprio is still living the life a 30-year-old man dreams of. Still unmarried, still childless, still bringing his mother to award shows. The question is whether that is freedom or freeze frame, but there is a legacy Leo is building beyond cinema. A legacy that may outlast any film he has ever made. The Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation was established in 1998, right after Titanic made him rich enough to act on his values at scale. And since then, the foundation has donated more than $100 million to over 70 conservation projects in more than 40 countries. From 2014 to 2016, he served as a United Nations messenger of peace focused on climate change. He produced and narrated the environmental documentaries The 11th Hour in 2007 and Before the Flood in 2016. He invested early in Beyond Meat before the company IPO'd at a $4 billion valuation in 2019. The Blackador Cay Island he bought in 2005 for $1.75 million was not to build a luxury resort, but to develop an ecotourism project combined with ecosystem restoration. The project is unfinished, but the vision is so clear that it is itself a statement. And most recently, in August 2026, he joined Jeff Bezos in leading a $200 million project to protect the 100 most threatened animal species on the planet. The familiar paradox still follows him. Hollywood's most passionate climate activist is still frequently criticized for private jets and yachts, a contradiction he has never answered satisfactorily. But looking more broadly, more than $100 million donated, dozens of species protected, millions of people inspired to care about the planet. Leo's environmental legacy may outlast every golden statue because films fade with time, but the planet has no sequel. And then there is a small quiet circle almost no one notices. Yet perhaps the detail that says the most about the real Leonardo DiCaprio at 51. Adam Farrar, the stepbrother, lost custody of his daughter Normandy, who is now being raised by grandfather George and step-grandmother Peggy. Even though Leo has not spoken to Adam for years, even though the distance between the two brothers has become an unbridgeable chasm, he remains present in Normandy's life. Still takes his niece shopping in Beverly Hills, still spends time with the child whose biological father cannot care for her. Leo has no children of his own, but he is giving his niece what circumstance took from her: a stable role model, a warm hand amid a broken family, an adult who does not disappear. The circle completes in a way no one planned. Leo grew up in a broken family and was held by grandmother and mother. And now he is doing the same for Normandy, passing on the protection he received to the next generation, even though that generation is not his own child, but the niece of the stepbrother he has lost. Leonardo DiCaprio cannot be reduced to a story of a perfect life because of the slum, the OCD, the heroin-addicted stepbrother, 4 near-death experiences, 17 stitches on his face, and the loneliness at 51. Nor can he be reduced to a story of tragedy, because his career is still at the peak. 7 Oscar nominations, the deepest mother-son relationship in Hollywood, an environmental legacy that truly matters to the planet, and talent that has not diminished after more than 3 decades. What is he? He is a human being, complex, contradictory, imperfect, exactly like anyone else. Only everything is amplified under the lights that billions of people are watching. What he has done for cinema will outlast every controversy. In an era when Hollywood is swallowed by franchises and sequels, Leo chooses art. In an era of social media that exposes everything, he chooses silence. In an era when everyone chases money, he chooses the role. He reminds the world that Hollywood can still be serious, that a star can both sell tickets and create art, and that refusing the easy path is the bravest act an artist can make. The real legacy does not lie in the trophy cabinet. It lies in every young actor who learns that saying no to the easy role is courage. In every poor child who sees the boy from Needle Alley and knows that the neighborhood does not decide the future. In every forest protected by his money and his voice. The final image. The BAFTA Awards on February 16, 2026. Leo in a classic black tuxedo. Ermelin, 83, in a long-sleeved black sequin dress. The two of them arm in arm on the red carpet. Those two people. The mother who once drove 3 hours every day through the poorest streets of Los Angeles. And the boy who once refused to change his name to Lenny Williams, have traveled an unbelievably long road. From Needle Alley to the BAFTA red carpet. From the rickety house near Hollywood Boulevard to a private island in Belize. From Critters 3 release straight to video to 7 Oscar nominations. From 3 hours of driving every day to the front row of every major awards show on the planet. But the question no one dares to ask directly still hangs in the air. Quieter than every round of applause, heavier than every golden statue. When Ermelin is no longer there, who will link arms with him on the red carpet? The tragedy of Leonardo DiCaprio is not that he lacks anything. The tragedy is that he is so perfect that no one thinks he also needs to be saved. While he himself perhaps is still searching for what the 1-year-old boy lost when his parents separated, a home that never falls apart. When you look back at Leonardo DiCaprio's journey, what is the first thing that appears in your mind? Is it the brilliant career, the silent loneliness, or the love of the mother who never gave up? Share in the comments below and help us honor the man who made the world believe that art is still worth sacrificing everything for.